Hello there. They claim the European Union keeps the peace in Europe. Don't make me laugh. During the years I spent campaigning for Brexit, I remember the continual claim from Ramonas that still goes on now that the EU is the peacekeeper of Europe, the so-called Pax Europea. And here is the European Union's own statement on this from their website. Under key achievements, the top one is a continent at peace. And by a continent, the Eurocrats do of course mean the whole of Europe, including the Balkans, the Crimea and Ukraine. And the EU also makes the claim the EU has delivered over half a century of peace and stability and prosperity. Delivered. Not even mentioning that it was the military and nuclear umbrella of Nato that allowed the EU to form and grow. But no acknowledgement of this from the Eurocrats. No. And in 2012 the EU as an entity was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for over 6 decades contributed to the advancement of peace and reconciliation, democracy and human rights in Europe. But the accurate fact is that the EU was formed when? That's right, on the 1st of November 1993, so it's not yet 30 years old, let alone 60. NATO was formed in 1949. It is 72 years old. The EU has stolen and is wearing the medal that should have been awarded to NATO. All those years of US and UK troops and tanks stationed in Central Europe helping to deter a Soviet advancement further west. And now, one of the drivers behind this new Russia-inspired threat to Ukraine is the EU and its continued downplaying of importance of NATO and its ambitions to replace it. And now when things look sticky, it is to NATO they turn. They need NATO to ensure that if the Russians do go all deranged and invade the part of Ukraine they don't already control, that if Putin does go in, he will not dare go 1 inch into NATO or EU territory. Once again relying on the US and the UK to provide the backstop to their failure. They even want the UK to head up their new European Security Council. Right, let's imagine the EU had got their way and NATO had left the arena to the EU to look after. No access to US satellite imagery, no strength in depth of military behind them, and maybe a Brexit UK more reluctant to get involved. What would Ursula von der Leyen be doing right now? Well, I reckon they all would be cozying up to Putin and telling the Ukraine to make as many concessions as it takes. Germany's need for gas would go from being one of the major issues into the main driving issue. And France wouldn't be much better. Right now, without NATO, Putin would be in the Ukraine and eyeing up the lost Soviet empire of places like Poland and Estonia, both EU member states, and even maybe looking as far afield as Finland. And Finland is now thinking of joining NATO as being in the EU is not enough to give the protection it needs as a country. Right now, without NATO, parts of the EU like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania and Poland would also be under imminent threat of invasion. The EU needs the umbrella of NATO, which automatically brings the US into play to keep the peace. As Charlemagne in The Economist wrote in October 2012 about the EU's Peace Prize. Surely NATO and the presence of American forces has been an equally, if not more important factor in keeping the peace in Europe through the decades of the Cold War. And it was intervention by America more than Europe, be it as the EU or individual countries, that eventually put a stop to the bloodletting in the ex-Yugoslavia. And the Telegraph's Ian Martin at the time wrote, "Daftest of all is the notion that the EU itself has kept the peace. It was the Allies led by the Americans, the Russians and the British who defeated and disarmed the Germans in 1945. The German people then underwent the most extraordinary reckoning, transforming their country into an essentially pacifist society. The EU had very little to do with it. Throughout that period it was NATO, led by the Americans and British, which kept the peace in Western Europe. Absolutely correct. And it will be NATO today that will be the only thing that can stymie any dreams Putin has beyond Ukraine of going into NATO member states, including those that are in the EU. The truth is that the claim that it is the EU that has kept the peace in Europe has been greatly overstated and greatly overestimated. Look at what it's trying to do in Northern Ireland. So the case for the EU itself has been diminished and devalued. So, who do you think kept the peace? The EU or NATO? Please like and comment below. Please subscribe and like this video, buy a mug and support me on Patreon or PayPal, and thank you for watching.